guys, it's Izzy here with my best books of 2022 video. I'm going to apologize for no makeup. I'm not really apologizing, I'm just acknowledging the fact that I haven't been that active on social media because I did catch the stomach bug and was down. Well, I was in quarantine for about 5 days. I was only sick for really 3 of those days. And it was not fun. It is going around. I swear every time I open Facebook, there's somebody being like, is there a virus going around? I think there might be. So stay safe out there. Winter time is when diseases really like to spread. So yeah, just stay safe, friends. Wash your hands. All of that fun stuff. But let's talk about my top 10 books of 2022. If you guys would like to see my honorable mentions, they are on my Bookstagram, which I will leave linked down below in the pinned comment and the description box of this video. Be sure to follow me there because you're only getting that content there and not in this video. But number 10, so the 10th best book that I read this year, and really a lot of these are interchangeable except the top 3. I love them all, and it was really hard narrowing down. Like, I was literally like, oh my gosh, what do I do? So they're interchangeable. I loved all of them and I highly recommend all of these books. But number 10 is Don't Cry for Me by Daniel Black. A beautiful and emotional tale that I am sure was hard but therapeutic for the author Daniel Black to write. In the author's note, he speaks of how this story was somewhat inspired by his relationship that he has or had with his own father. The character work was really amazing and something as a reader I haven't seen a lot of. This is a letter from a father explaining to his son like his side of things and why he raised his son the way that he raised him, his regrets, and just how he wishes he could have done some things differently, but also knowing that, recognizing that because he did all that, that's why their relationship is the way that it is in the modern day. Normally we see these kind of stories from the point of view of the children, but this was from the parents' perspective, which I found very fascinating. This was an important story to tell. I do wish though that we would have got Isaac's perspective, or at least his reaction to this letter and the fallout from that. Instead, the whole thing is just at the father's perspective. The setting takes place between rural Arkansas and then Kansas City. The Southern culture was spot on. You'll see throughout this video, a lot of these books take place in the South. During the pandemic, I just realized my love for the South, for Southern literature, and home, really. And I feel like this time period is especially fascinating because in that mid-century going to modern day, there were so many changes happening in this part of the country with racism, feminism, and I mean really all over, but I feel like really heavily in the South because I feel like a lot of it is still kind of here. So just to see what really started that change and that change that is still happening to this day. And as I stated earlier, the writing of this book was just so beautiful and so emotional. I honestly thought I was gonna cry for this book, even though it's called Don't Cry for Me. I didn't cry, but I almost did. The book starts with the author's note. The books usually end with author notes, but this one started, and I was honestly wanting to annotate that. I can't wait to go back and annotate all my favorite quotes from this book. Again, the plot was something we don't really see a lot. We see generational trauma really shown, and I feel like that is something that needs to be showcased more in the media and books, movies, whatever, because it is so prevalent in our society, and I think it's really the root of every single issue in the country, probably the world, but I haven't researched every country in the world. I know in the United States anyway that I do think it is the root of every single issue we have. And so I love to see it on page because I do think it is something so important that we all need to acknowledge and change. This is a moving story and I cannot recommend it enough. I just really wish that we would have got Isaac's reaction to the letter from his father. Number 9 is completely different, and that is The Deal by Elle Kennedy. This is a hockey romance book. The characters had more depth to them than you usually get in a romance book. I really liked that this was a college setting because I am close in age with the characters that were in the novel. The dialogue was realistic, but it did grind my gears at times, but I can't fault it because that really is how a lot of 20-something-year-old boys talk, and it bothers me in real life, so it's gonna bother me on page as well. I really enjoyed this book and I am not surprised by all the hype surrounding it. Number 8 is another romance, and that is Book Lovers by Emily Henry best romance of the year for me. The characters had so much depth to them. I was not just rooting for one of them, I was rooting for both of them, even though we only got the perspective of one of the characters. The writing was average for a romance novel, nothing special there. And then the setting goes between New York and North Carolina, and you can't go wrong with either of those places. I love reading books set in both of them. This had all my favorite tropes. We have family values, we have enemies to lovers, kind of a lot of banter there, and then all the small town fills. Not let the hype fool you, this one is definitely worth it. Number 7 is Take My Hand by Dolan Perkins Valdez. My time reading about Sybil made me feel like an old man who is yelling at the sports team on the TV who cannot hear him. She kept getting herself into situations, making things harder for her, and I was like, no, don't do that. Please don't do that. She does take note though at the end of the story how she was really putting her life on hold and not taking care of herself because she was putting herself in these situations, and I consider that real character development, that she did realize her mistakes and where she was wrong and her flaws. Sybil really did grow as a character throughout this novel, but at times she did kind of drive me up a wall. Again, the Southern culture was spot on here. Dialect, food, politics. The author knows Alabama quite well. I don't know if they are originally from there. I know they live in Washington, D.C. now, but they did their research quite well. The writing was albeit average, but it didn't take anything away from the story for me or add anything either. It's fine. The ideas and themes here are so important with how women's rights are still being questioned 50 years later. In school, I never learned of the injustices that the federal government did to people in the name of science and health. This might be a fictional novel, but it's so important to learn what our country was doing to impoverished people. They were sterilizing minors and grown women alike, not getting their full consent, or the women not having a full understanding of what they were signing up for being sterilized. This was hard hitting and tough to read, but it is one that I cannot recommend enough because we do need to know this part of our history, even if it is hard. Number 6, oh, I am totally messing up. 6 is the book of The Unnamed Midwife by Meg Ellison. The midwife was not a character that I liked or disliked, but I think that was the way the story was supposed to go. The side characters were extremely strong throughout this short little book, though. I did the ebook, so it might not be that short. I don't know. But it was a short reading experience for me. The setting was so grim and desolate, but I loved it. I love that the author used real cities instead of fictional towns and places, because it's easier to follow the characters and just made the story flow together. The writing was creative, but I wouldn't call it poetic and lyrical, but it really did make you take a step back for a moment and be like, whoa, what did I just read? This is the 3rd virus book that I've read, but it's the best one that I have read, and I am so thankful that I won this book in a Goodreads giveaway. Okay, top 5 now with The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks by Rebecca Skloot. This book is so important, and again, I do not know why it is not taught in schools. There is a young adult version of this book, and I do think that should be read in schools, and I just love that there's a young adult version because that makes this story so accessible to a wider audience. Believe it or not, Henrietta Lacks has impacted every single one of our lives. If you're watching this, she impacted your life. This story shows the morals or lack of morals in science. It brings up many things that seem just to be hidden away inside American history. A lot of us think that the Nazis were the only ones doing experiments on their citizens, but it was happening in our own country, the United States, in the last century. It's disgusting and needs to be brought to light. We need to bring justice to all of these people who it impacted. I am so glad that this Lacks family finally found somebody like Rebecca Skloot to respect their mother or grandmother and tell the story the way that it should be told. Number 4 is A Booth by Karen Joy Fowler. I picked up this book as it was the only book that I own that was nominated for the Booker Prize this year. We follow 3 siblings of the infamous John Wilkes Booth. First, we have the older sister, Rosalie. Her job is usually taking care of the family because her dad's a famous actor and the mom's usually having to take care of him, man-child, so Rosalie is taking care of the younger children. Then we have Edwin, who is he's one of the brothers, and he wants to be just like his father. He wants to be a famous actor. And then we have Asia, who's one of the middle children. She is the youngest sister, and she's just trying to find where she fits in with this large family of 10 children. We are with this family until the time they are children, until they are in their graves, and I never lost interest in them. I love the setting of the 1800s, as it's one that I usually don't read, and then it takes place mainly in Maryland, but all up and down the East Coast, and really all over the world, but mainly the East Coast, and I just loved getting to learn about these places in that time period. Writing was fantastic, and I am already trying to decide which Karen Joy Fowler book that I'm going to pick up next. So if you have any recommendations, let me know in the comments. In the present day United States, we see a lot of mass shootings, or shootings in general, and we never really know why a person does that, or what leads to somebody doing something like that, and what happens to their families, how they were raised. And that's what inspired Karen Joy Fowler to write this book. We see the Wilkes family watch their brother John Wilkes go on to commit the horrendous crime of assassinating the president. So we get to spot red flags all throughout his childhood through the point of views of his siblings, and then we see the family come to terms that somebody they love is actually a monster, and how they can adjust to being an outcast in society. And it's definitely a new favorite book of mine. Now let's go to the number 3 spot with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood by Quentin Tarantino. This is a character-driven novel at its finest. Cliff is still the coolest, and Rick still has the most boring point of view. If I could be dropped into one setting, this would be it. I think that says a lot for the atmosphere of the novel. My only complaint was the writing. I feel like at the start of the story there was a lot of head jumping between characters, but it did improve as the story went on. If you are thinking that you don't need to read this because you have seen the movie, you are wrong. This adds so much more. There are scenes that we don't even see in the movie, and just different time periods that we don't see in the movie, so I highly recommend picking up Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Let's go to number 2 now, and that is Valentine by Elizabeth Wetmore. The characters, I love them so much, and I want them all to live their best lives. They are all so detailed, but they are all connected, and I think it's really beautiful because we are all connected in some way. And this book is the one that made me realize I love a small town setting, I love a southern setting, but especially I love a Texas setting. So again, let me know some Texas books down in the comment below because I'll eat them up. This one specifically takes place in Odessa. This was a debut novel, and the writing was so beautiful. Like, it blows my mind this was a debut. Elizabeth Wetmore, I definitely need you to bring more books to the table because I will read them. You are an auto-buy author for me now, and I can't wait to see what this author comes out with next. This plot shows us that each and every one of us has a story that is important, that we're all here for a reason and important to the world, even if we don't feel like it at times. I love this novel and can't wait to reread it. That takes us to our number 1 book. My number 1 book of 2022, number 1, is Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Dower. Just great character work here. So you notice the character that I want to say stands out the most, but I think it's really just because we get more time with him. We practically see his whole life, when the others we just get bits and pieces of. You get so hooked on one section and you don't want it to end, but then you just get so enthralled with the next section, so it's so difficult to put down this book, even if it is its home. All these stories are connected in some way, and I was honestly scared that they wouldn't be, but the author definitely knew what he was doing, and you can trust him. I wasn't certain how this would be atmosphere-wise. We are given a lot, and it might be overwhelming to some audiences. In chronological order, we have characters in Bulgaria and Turkey in the 1400s, and then we have characters in the modern day, roughly from the 1930s to the 2070s in Idaho, and then one in the future that is on a spaceship. This is a lot to take in, and I didn't know how it would all come together, but it did. Again, trust the author, trust the process. You will get there, I promise, and it will be worth it in the end. Each setting was like nothing I've ever read before. It gave me so much knowledge on just the human experience and how life is different all over the world, but also the same in some kind of way. The writing was like that of a Greek epic. It was told just like a classic story, almost fairy tale-like. The story felt as old as time, and that's kind of poetic because stories and time are 2 of the big themes here. The chapters were short, so I never felt bogged down in one place and like I was going to be there forever. As I said, you are really enthralled with the story, and even if it is over 600 pages, it does fly by. I absolutely love this book, and if I had to recommend one book from 2022, that would be it. That's why it's my #1 book. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you made it all the way through, leave a star emoji in the comments below and let me know what your favorite book was in 2022. And as always, comment, rate, and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that notification bell to be notified when all my videos go live. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!